I literally took a vacation like while he was like moving all his shit out of the house so that I just didn't even have to be there. And I didn't have to take PTO. I didn't have to talk to my boss about any weird, awkward, like mental health leave that I need to take. I could just focus on this transition period, pour into myself. I started going to the gym like 5 times a week. I had friends over all the time. I was leaning on family for support. That for me was like the first real experience that I had in understanding the true power of a financially independent woman. Because I didn't give a fuck. I just said, I'm getting out of here, and money is not going to be the reason why I'm stuck.
Welcome to the Chingona Revolution podcast, where we will bring out your inner badass Latina, overcome self-doubt, help you gain clarity, and pave your own path, all while leading with courage. I am your host, Latina coach and speaker, Erica Cruz. Jannese Torres, welcome back to Chingona Revolution podcast. I think you're the only guest that we've had on. This is the third time that you're on. And yeah, I know. And I'm so excited because so much, it hasn't even been that long, but so much has changed for you. So first, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I remember when you were just first launching this show, and I cannot tell you how many clients that we've had like in our mutual circle, and you're doing life-changing work. There's so many people that talk about your program. And so I'm just honored to be here and share this space with you. And I'm doing amazing. And I'm so excited to catch up because there's so much to talk about.
I know there is so much to talk about, and thank you. Thank you for giving me my flowers. Honestly, sometimes I have to like pinch myself and I'm like, holy shit, Jannese is my friend. Like I've known her for years. I've spoken at her event. She's been on the podcast 3 times, and I've just got to say it's been so beautiful to watch your journey because you started your podcast how long ago?
It's gonna be 6 years in actually it was 6 years last month. It's crazy.
Wow. Well, happy anniversary to the podcast. And did you know 6 years ago that this podcast would completely change your life?
Girl, I don't know what the hell I was doing, first of all. I was launching a show on my little iPhone, whatever it was, with my little AirPods, thinking I was gonna have basically a virtual brunch style conversation where we're all talking shit about money. Obviously this was like not part of the
Oh my
plan.
gosh.
And I feel like the more that I've embraced the idea of just literally going with the flow of life, things have come for me that I literally could not have even imagined. It's nuts.
Oh, that's exactly what I want to dive into today. So, people from the outside looking in think, oh, like, Yo Quiero Dinero, Jannese Torres, like, she has, you know, built this empire what seems like overnight. But for the first few years, it was not like that. You were working an engineering job. So, can you tell us just a little bit about your journey when it comes to the business and how it may, from the outside looking in, seem like it just came so easy for you, but how this has actually been a work in progress? And yes, things do happen very quickly, which we'll talk a little bit about, like how your life has evolved and changed and so quickly. But first, let's start with the business. Tell us like a little bit of behind the scenes, what was going on.
Yeah, so I always like to remind people that like every overnight success story is 10 years in the making, and I am absolutely no exception. Okay. Like I've literally been at this like online content creation game since 2013, y'all. Okay. So 2013 is 2025. I'm 12 years in, and I feel like in year 6 maybe is when I just started kind of really cracking the code, and then from there it's been like just kind of diversifying where I've created content and the methods and evolving with the ecosystems too, because when I started as a content creator, I initially went into the blogging world. So that is my first foray into like learning how you can use content to make money online. And blogging was very, very popular back then. And podcasting wasn't even a thing. So I was a food blogger for a couple of years. After I got good at monetization, which is really around like year 5 and 6, I started thinking like I'm ready for something new. I want to try something new. At that point, this is 2018, and I've been listening to podcasts for a couple of years, and I really like got bitten by the personal finance bug because at that point I had just turned like 30. I was feeling that pressure of like, what am I doing to my money? Like, why is everybody around me like buying houses and doing all the things? And I'm feeling like a brokey, even though I'm making six figures as an engineer. And so I was really burnt out by my career. And I literally Googled, like, how do you quit your job? Because I was over it. I'm like, I can't do this shit for another 35 years. Like, I did not sign up for this ghetto-ness. Okay. And I stumbled upon the financial independence movement and I learned about these people who were using their six-figure salaries to literally like quit their jobs in their 40s. And I was like, say less. Okay. So I started listening to all the podcasts, reading all the blogs, reading all the books. And one common thing that I noticed is like, where are the women of color who are talking about
Mm.
this, right? It's a bunch of like bros talking about how they're using their like Silicon Valley tech jobs to quit their careers and go live on a farm and whatever. And I'm just like, well, first of all, that's cool, but also not relatable at all, right? Like I don't have a trust fund, I don't have rich parents, I don't have a safety net. And so if I really want to make this happen, I'm going to have a different strategy. And it wasn't until I started listening to the Journey to Launch podcast by Jamila Souffrant that I got the first taste of like what it sounds like to hear about money from the lens of a first gen woman of color who is also pursuing financial independence. And I was really like inspired at that moment to create a version of that podcast for Latinas specifically because I really just wanted to like talk to my friends about this, talk to
Mhm.
strangers on the internet, and just create a space where it felt a lot more relatable. And so I started the podcast. I was literally just like talking to my friends and we just were talking about our money shit, how much debt we have, student loans, what we want to do, investing, all this stuff. And slowly but surely, it turned into this incredible community that is now a five-time award-winning podcast, has gotten me a book deal, has allowed me to quit my engineering career and do this full time now since 2021. And so, yeah, y'all, like this shit takes time, okay? Like, and in between all of the success that you've seen, I've also had failed attempts, like being a travel blogger, like having my e-commerce store that never took off. I'm still trying to figure out YouTube, right? So I've just embraced this idea that like we build on our success as we go along and we try different things and pivot and some shit hits and some doesn't. But I have embraced this idea that like I'm gonna have so many different identities as I evolve that I'm just really like looking forward to continuing that discovery process. It no longer scares me to try new shit. It's actually very exciting.
That's incredible. And so you mentioned the podcast then landed you a book deal, and the reason that the conversation or the what sparked this having you back on the podcast interview was the launch of your book in Spanish. So
Yeah.
not only have you, I mean, you were really one of the first, or I would say the first, Latina money coach, money like blogger, money thought leader in our space. And I feel like you've given so many other Latinas permission to show up and do this. And we need more of them, right? We need as many people in our community talking about this. But I think the book even takes it to a whole nother level. Now you've given more people access to this knowledge who don't have parents that worked in finance, who don't have access to education. But now on a whole nother level, the book is now in Spanish. So tell us why it's important for this book to also be in Spanish.
Yeah, I knew right away that when I was talking to the publisher that this was something that needed to be on the list of must happens. Because for me, I know how powerful it's been to find like culturally competent personal finance information because now the space is way more diversified than it was when I started. And so, my book is one of several now that have come out specifically geared towards the Latina community. And I'm so honored to be a part of that conversation because when I was starting out my own like personal finance education journey, it was freaking impossible to find a book that was literally specific to Latinas. And so when my English language book came out, Financially Lit, it was revolutionary in itself. But now the fact that the Spanish language version, which is called Yo Quiero Dinero, is out, it not only introduces a whole new audience to my brand because my content is largely in English, like the podcast and all that stuff, but it's a conversation starter for multiple generations now, right? Like somebody like you or I who are first gen who maybe consume content in English can buy the Spanish language version and like share it with your titi, share it with your mom, share it with your abuela. And so there's this like book club in a sense that we can now have with our elders who may not have proficiency of the English language, but they also deserve access to information. And you'd be surprised how in 2025 it's still so difficult to find financial institutions like major banks and investment firms that have multi-language educational content. And so
Yeah.
it's almost like there's this vacuum that exists around just accessibility when it comes to information. And so folks like myself, personal finance educators have really had to take it upon ourselves to create the resources for a community that the financial institutions just haven't taken the initiative to do.
Yeah. And, as you were speaking, I was also thinking about obviously we have a lot of inequities here in the States, but when I think about Mexico, right, my parents are from such a rural place in Mexico. So even in Mexico, the accessibility is so limited. I'm assuming it's the same in all these other Latin American countries. And,
True.
having a book like me being able to go back to Mexico and give like a family member your book, like they suddenly have access to this treasure chest that probably wouldn't have even been available to them back home.
Yeah.
So that is amazing. Congratulations for having the foresight and advocating for that, and also advocating for having yourself on the cover of your book. I think we may have talked about this in the past podcast episode, but I think it's worth reiterating because you and I had a conversation in Puerto Rico. It wasn't the time I was there for your event. I think I was there for a conference. Me, Mariela, and Liz were there for a conference, and we ended up. You were like, "Oh, I'm here too," and we all ended up meeting up, and that was like
Yeah.
one of the beautiful synchronicities that the universe just kind of throws at us. And your book wasn't out yet, but you were starting to tell us a little bit about your book, and you were telling us of the importance of having you on the cover. So can you share that with us? Like, why did you fight for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, there's like so many random white dudes on the covers of their personal finance books. And there's something very like visceral about seeing someone that you can relate to on the cover of a book. It's almost like their first permission slip to even like pick up the book. Right. And so for me, it was super important from a representation standpoint because at the end of the day, like less than 10% of authors are Latina. And in the personal finance space, I mean, that's like a percentage of a percentage point, you know? So
Wow.
it was really important for me to just be like as blatantly loud and Latina on the cover. Like I'm wearing a fucking Barbie pink, hot
Suit.
blazer,
Yeah.
one earrings. Like we out here just like this is not your average personal finance book. And I wanted people to really feel that not only in the content, but also just in the presentation of it. You see that book on the shelf compared to like all the, standard rich dad, poor dad, all the stuff that is quote unquote like the classics. And this stands out. And I wanted it to be that way for a reason because there's something very powerful, like I said, about representation.
That's beautiful. So a lot has happened since I've known you. When I met you, you were living in a different state. You didn't have a book yet, but now you are married. Congratulations! You're married.
I was married when we
Yes,
met, but
you're
not
right.
to that guy anymore.
So, I'm pretty sure all of this was very fresh the last time we had you on the podcast, so we didn't really talk about what was going on, but you've talked a lot on social media, which is why I feel comfortable asking you this, but you've talked a lot about not letting yourself just settle and like really striving for more. And I feel like when you made that decision in your personal life, it also rippled into your professional life as well, right? The book deal, like all of these amazing things started happening. Your podcast with QuickBooks, going to the red carpet event for iHeartRadio, like all of these amazing things. So can you tell us a little bit about like where were you? Like who was the old Jannese and what changed that allowed you to welcome in all of these new things in your life?
Mm. Oh God. I mean, the journey through personal development has been so extensive. I mean, I think I started kind of getting bit by the bug pretty much around the same time that I started learning about the power of money because the thing that happens like when you understand the true power of money, it's not about like a number in the bank account. It's about the amount of options that money gives you, okay? And so when I was first really considering taking the leap into entrepreneurship, it was also during a period where I felt like I had reached kind of the end of my marriage at the time. And so it was almost like the universe was subconsciously like pushing me to focus on this business because this was actually going to be my ticket to financial freedom and to just really be able to make that break with the least disruption to my personal security. And honestly, that's exactly how it happened. So I started planning my quote unquote escape from corporate early 2021, and part of that escape process was meeting with a financial advisor who told me, you need to get a postnuptial agreement before you do this, like take the leap of quitting your job. And her standpoint was, I want you to protect yourself financially and make sure your business never ends up belonging to somebody else if you end up getting divorced. And I was like, that's a great suggestion. And so I put those things in motion, ended up making sure that like all of the paperwork said like, if I was to get divorced, I don't owe you alimony. Any property I own is mine. My business is mine. My interests are mine. Your debt is yours. All that stuff. And so I ended up using the postnup the next year when I found out that my ex-husband was having an affair. And it was the last straw. There was like so much shit that had been piling up at that point that I was like, yeah, I'm done. Like, I just, this is not life. And so when I made that decision, I had mentally checked out of the relationship way before that, right? Because I think we as women, like, we are done before we're done for a very long fucking time. And so I was kind of just like, well, this is the sign I needed, right? It's just a sign that I knew some shit wrong and it's in my face now. And so I was able to literally dissolve my marriage, walk away from that whole situation in like 48 hours. And it is honestly because I had the financial wherewithal to do it. I didn't have to worry about how I was going to pay my rent, how I was going to pay my bills. I literally took a vacation like while he was like moving all his shit out of the house so that I just didn't even have to be there. And I didn't have to take PTO. I didn't have to talk to my boss about any weird, awkward, like mental health leave that I need to take. I could just focus on this transition period, pour into myself. I started going to the gym like 5 times a week. I had friends over all the time. I was leaning on family for support. And that for me was like the first real experience that I had in understanding the true power of a financially independent woman. Because I didn't give a fuck. I just said, I'm getting out of here, and money is not going to be the reason why I'm stuck.
Wow, and I think that's so relevant for our community because, I mean, even with yeah, just, like, a lot of my aunts or just, like, people that I've seen in our family who, like, I could tell they're not happy, but they don't have options. They don't have options because they rely on their husband, their partner to financially support them. So, this financial freedom was your ticket out and your ticket to having options. Wow. So,
Yeah.
there's so many ways that we can take this. I have so many questions.
It's real, it's like it's one thing to learn about the power of investing and diversifying your income and, the power of entrepreneurship. But like when you see it in real like life action, when you realize the true power, it shifts your perspective in a way that it's like, I need to tell everybody about this shit. And so I feel like that whole experience just really doubled down my need to like sing from the rooftops, if you will, and just tell women like, look, y'all, they've lied, okay? They were telling us money doesn't buy happiness. I would beg to differ, okay? Because I am much happier not being stuck in a loveless marriage, not being subjected to emotional abuse, just
Yeah.
being able to walk away and knowing that I'm good, that I got me. That is, you walk around in the world with a different level of energy and you have a lot less tolerance for bullshit when you know at any point, I don't need to be here. I do not need to deal with this. And it just doesn't just apply to relationships. When you have financial independence, you don't have to deal with a toxic boss who harasses you on vacation. You don't have to worry about taking time off to be with your child because they're sick. You don't have to miss the recital. You don't have to decide if I can be a caretaker to my parents or have, financial freedom. And so there's just so much that we have to understand. It's way more than just numbers in an account, y'all. This is
Yeah.
like the freedom that people talk about, that's where it comes from. It comes from money. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, right? And this narrative that we have in our community of like, oh, money's evil and people who have money are bad. It's like money just makes you a little bit more of who you already are, right? So like
Exactly.
you're a perfect example of that. Like look how much positive impact and how much you've given back now that you have money.
It's
And
true.
yeah. Mhm.
It is an amplifier. If you're a crappy
Yes.
person, you're just a crappy person with money. And if you're a good person, you're a good person with money. And I'd rather us have a lot more money in the hands of good people because the world will be a much, much better place. And especially women. Okay. Because women
Yes.
are oriented to pour into their communities. We are community oriented creatures. Right. And so I just think about what it's going to look like, half a, century from now when like the idea of financial financially independent women is just like the mainstream, right? When we keep talking
Yep.
about this, it just becomes more and more normal. I have more and more brunches and lunches with like women who are retiring their husbands, who are the breadwinners of their household, who are the badasses with money. I'm just like, I'm waiting for the world where like this is the norm because it will be a completely different place than what it is right now.
Yeah. Yeah, it will. Oh, I can't wait. So tell us about your life now. You're married, but happily married, and you're a mom.
I am, girl. Let me tell you, when I made the decision to pull the plug on my marriage, it really spurred like a new just cycle of just change in every aspect of my life, right? So that same year, I ended up making the most money I've ever made in business. So it's like, talk about removing the blockages, that shit is real. I ended up really like pouring into myself physically. I was having a trainer, 4 days a week. Like I was strength training, doing all the things. Like your girl was out here living her best life. And I, unfortunately, because I think society still like programs us as women to believe like once you're over the age of 30, like your shit's over. And so I was resigned kind of to the idea that like I'm probably never going to meet another person. I was like 37 at the time. Oh my God, like, I'm going to start a new relationship, blah, blah. So I just on a whim downloaded some dating apps, met some weirdos, and I was just like, oh, this is probably what's gonna end up being the story of my life. And then I go on Hinge. And my now husband is like the first match that the algorithm gives me. And we end up meeting and literally I think we were in love with each other in like 24 hours. It could give some red flags, it felt very like love bombish for a little bit. And I was kind of like, you're fucking weird. Like, why do you like me so much? I had to like kind of push him away a little bit because I was just so used to like detached, emotionally unregulated men that like for him to be just super genuine and super like just direct in his feelings, I was like, what's wrong with you? Like men are not like this. So I was suspicious of him for a little bit. But I realized, very quickly that I was in self-sabotage mode and just thinking like men aren't shit and kind of applying a broad stroke to things. And so when I
Mhm.
kind of let the trauma go of the past, it really opened up my eyes to something that was really like genuine in my face. And so we've had a whirlwind romance, y'all. We met in February of 2023. By December, we were moving in. We decided to have a baby in April of 2024. Baby's here December 2024, and we just got married last month. So when I tell you it's been like a Hollywood romance, it definitely has. But it's been like just such a lesson in understanding that there is happiness on the other side of just refusing to settle. And so it's just been a very eye-opening experience that I also have been sharing on social media because I just want women to know, especially the ones that have been told like it's too late for you, that it's absolutely fucking not. Okay. I'm 40 years old with a newborn child. And so I want to just reassure you that when it's your time, it's your time. And to not get caught up in society's bullshit about like what you need to be doing by a certain age because this really is your canvas to paint. And the sooner that you get out of trying to paint the picture that everybody else says you should paint and go and focus on your own shit, you're going to create a masterpiece, a work of art that becomes your life.
Wow, that's such a beautiful analogy. So as you were speaking, what came to my mind is you surrendered. You surrendered. You accepted what was. You were like, okay, I'm no longer like trying to fight this. If I don't meet somebody, if I don't become a mom, like I'm at peace with that. And that's when everything happened. And then funny enough, when you met your now husband, we as humans tend to cling on to what's familiar, and your familiarness was men being emotionally unavailable. So suddenly having this person who was giving you the love that you seeked, it was hard for you to receive. But for you to have that self-awareness and be like, wait, I'm self-sabotaging right now is huge. And that's a testament to also all of your inner work and all of the, like this self-development world. Once you get into it, you're going to outgrow people and it's inevitable. And that's like, I think the hardest part because we learn and we become very self-aware and we almost get to this new level of consciousness that we outgrow people who are on different levels of consciousness. Not saying like we're better than anyone else, but we just don't match anymore. And I think that's what happened also with your previous marriage. And you, as you mentioned, mentally you were already out, but the universe was like, she ain't gonna leave unless we do something like this. So let's just throw this at her, right?
It's so true. Yeah. Sometimes we don't want to, face what is the unknown, right? You almost get so comfortable
Yes.
in the toxicity because it feels familiar. And so for me, I've had to just really kind of unlearn this sense of like that comfort is I think oftentimes we mask comfort with just familiarity and like you could be uncomfortable in a really fucking bad situation, but it feels familiar and so you're just like I guess, like, do I don't really wanna start over, or what if, like,
Yeah.
this is as good as it gets, you know? And I think oftentimes that's how we stay stuck in careers, we stay stuck in relationships, we stay stuck in geographical locations. There's so many things that, you keep yourself small because you're afraid of the unknown, and I promise you, like, if the known is scary and shitty enough, what do you have to lose at this point? Like, what do you really have to lose?
That is great advice. Great advice for relationships, for careers, for people who want to start a side hustle, for all of the above. So now that you are a parent, now that you're a mom, because the thing is, I think you've been preparing for this moment since you started your business. How has your business changed now that you're a mom?
Man, it's funny because when my partner and I met, like we were both like we don't want kids. And so it's one of those things too where you realize like how much of your decisions are dictated by the environment that you're in. And I think for the longest time I thought I didn't want kids because I didn't want kids with my ex-husband. And then when you meet somebody new and you're just like you can imagine a completely different life, it shifted my perspective on things. And so when we decided that we wanted to become parents, one of the things that I realized is like I'm already in a position where I'm going to have like a very unique experience with this that my mom can't relate to, my sister can't relate to, my grandmother can't relate to because I have financial privilege. When I think about the experience that I've had now in the first 5 months of being a mom, like I haven't had to worry about when do I go back to work? How long is my maternity leave? Are they going to fire me at work and like replace me? I've talked to so many women who've been fired while they were pregnant or they were on maternity leave, and it's crazy. Knowing that I have the resources to hire help. My nanny just started working today. And before that, I've had a night nurse who's literally come and watch my child. Like she sits in a chair and watches my child sleep. And that means I can get a full night's sleep. And that level of privilege is like why I was doing all these things, not with the true intention of becoming a mom because that wasn't part of the plan when I started this, but I've realized again like how many options this preparation financially has given me,
Yeah,
and just the fact that like I get to be with my daughter every day. My husband works from home too. He works in the business now. And so like we get to be super fully present parents. And again, financial independence has made that happen. And so, I always tell people if you want to actually enjoy motherhood, you need money. Like, no, so whoever didn't tell you this, like somebody lied to you. That's why women are stressed out because they don't have the resources to buy the help, to buy the time, to buy the rest, to buy the self care. That all comes with financial privilege. And the more that we just like realize that that is the key to giving yourself a break from the struggle and to really be a better version of a parent than maybe you had in the past. The more people that know that, the better. Because I think about my own mom and just how stressed out she was all the time, and it really was because of a lack of resources. And so I was like, if I ever become a mom, I don't want to replicate that experience. And so taking my time to have that level of access to resources has made all the difference in how I'm experiencing motherhood and also how my daughter is experiencing me as a mother.
definitely. So now looking back, what did you do to, I guess, what's the word I want to use? What did you do to prepare to be a present parent? Like what tactically did you do in your business?
Yeah. So one of the things I realized is I am not going to be, um, as uh, able to be as spontaneous, right? Like my life now requires a lot more scheduling. And
Mhm.
so I really wanted to focus on those income streams in my business that didn't require me to show up for every dollar, if you will. And so
Totally.
one of the big reasons that I was able to have a fully funded maternity leave as a self-employed person is because of my food blog. So that was my first foray into content creation. Now, 12 years later, it's still a thing. It earns six figures a year in passive income, which
That's
basically means that all the
amazing.
content that I've created, it just gets fed through Google and different search engines to people, and it makes about $10,000 a month. And so I
Incredible.
knew that being uh off, for maternity leave, I was still going to have $10,000 coming in without me having to do anything. And so that for me has been such a key factor in being able to self-fund my maternity leave, have time, not feel like this pressure to come back right away and make money because of kind of the diverse ways that I earn income. Me as a business, I have about 9 different income streams at this point, and so it really is about, like, deciding where I wanna focus based on, my time, my capacity, my interests, and things like that. And so I think especially from a like, self-employment standpoint, you can't just have one way to make money, especially if it relies on you actually putting time in, meeting with clients, providing services, all those things. That for me is a really, really strategic part of having the space and the capacity to still run my business, but also be a present parent.
And the blog has been something that started this off, right? And then once you started making, I really do feel like that is a form of passive income, right? Like sometimes people talk about real estate being passive income, and I'm like, my mom owns properties. Yesterday we were there cleaning out a mess. A tenant left. Like there's so many expenses that come with
Yeah.
real estate, but with blogging, that was also one of the way that you started empowering others to create passive income. So tell us about your blogging course.
Yeah. So my Jumpstart Your Blog Bootcamp is now in year 3. And it's amazing because it's one of those things that I never thought like anybody wanted to learn. And so I kind of was hesitant to teach. And it's now by far my best-selling program. The Jumpstart Your Blog Bootcamp is literally my decade plus knowledge of how to monetize, how to grow your brand, how to actually decide what you're going to talk about so that you're not just like talking into the ether about something that nobody cares about, how to structure your blog post because it's not like writing, a diary entry. And so I've even incorporated as things have changed, like how do we use AI to create blog content? How do you get brand deals with your blog? How do you use things like Pinterest, right? So it's literally like a treasure trove of everything that I've learned to monetize my blog. And I'm hosting a free masterclass on how you can use your blog to reach not just like financial independence, but also location independence. Because this is the thing, you can make money from anywhere that you have Wi Fi with a blog. And for me, that was like such a turn on when I first found out about it as a business model, because I've always imagined at some point just living in different places. My husband and I, we've been talking about potentially relocating to Puerto Rico. And so just like knowing that I can make money from anywhere in the world is a really powerful tool. And especially like for parents, right? You think about starting a side hustle, you don't want to get a second job that like takes you out of the house even more. And so being able to do this from home, it's a great stay-at-home mom career. It's a great way to just like diversify your income as a creator. And it's just good for anybody who feels like they have cool, helpful, important, life-changing information that they want to share with the world in a way that doesn't require them to like dance on TikTok or like learn a new social media platform, because God knows there's a new one every freaking week. Um, it's a really powerful form of content creation that I think more people need to explore, because it really is one of these like hidden secrets of making money online.
Definitely. And I think a lot of people might be just like an objection that I can already imagine that I would love for you to address is people might be thinking, wait, but blogging was something that was big like 10, 15 years ago. So how is it still relevant today?
Yeah, the thing that makes a successful blog now in 2025 and beyond is that it has to be targeted information. So you're not going to get any traction doing like very generic content. Like, let's say you want to write a blog post on like budgeting tips. There's a million blog posts on budgeting tips. So you need to get more hyper specific on who you're helping and with what. So instead of budgeting tips as your topic, I would do a blog post like how to fund maternity leave if you're self employed, right? So the
Mm,
key to really creating content in 2025 is thinking about what is a person searching for that is they need help with, and how would they actually enter this information into Google. So if you think about it,
right.
how do you self fund a maternity leave? That's like a Google query, right? So you have to kind of think about how would someone search for this, and then reverse engineer essentially how would you teach that content. That is the key to making a successful blog nowadays. It's really useful, helpful, human created information, right? We're not out here trying to build blogs with ChatGPT because Google has already figured that out and they will penalize you, and nobody will ever see your content. Real life human experience, real life human expertise that is
Mhm.
focused and targeted. That's the way that you make money in 2025. And I think especially for creators who rely too much on social media for like driving traffic, getting brand deals and things like that, your shit can be shut down at any point. We've seen
It
that multiple
can.
times with Facebook, TikTok ban and then not being banned. Instagram goes down all the time. And so even as a creator, if you have a big social media presence, you owe it to your audience to have somewhere else that they can find you, because you just never know. The blog is the only thing that you actually own versus social media is just rented space.
Yeah, definitely. I remember whenever Instagram went down for like half a day and we all lost it. Like we were all like, "Oh my gosh, what's happening?" And then your post was the first one I saw and you're like, "This is why you need your own blog and that way you can capture emails and like this is rented space, I think is what you said. This is not owned space. This is you're literally renting and landlords can pull it at any time." Or with TikTok, I have like 200,000 followers on TikTok and then with the ban, I don't even focus on that anymore. So,
True.
yeah, things are changing every day. I can't believe we've only been recording for 35 minutes because I feel like we talked about so much. So, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to share that you feel called to share with the listeners?
So I think one of the things that you do so well, Erica, is just really reinforce like the power of courage, and I think that in the past at least 2 years of my life, I feel like embodying that energy has just really opened my eyes up to the possibilities of life in general. It took a lot of courage for me to start a new relationship after being, so hurt. It took a lot of courage for me to put myself out there and write a book, because I'm not like a trained author. I didn't go to school for like journalism or something. And even with this platform, like I'm not a finance person. I don't come from Wall Street. I'm an engineer. I come from like the medical field. I come from tech background. And so just finding the courage to try new things, to not settle, to challenge yourself and just embrace the idea that you're just one decision away from like a radically different life. I think that everybody just needs to remind themselves of that. So if you feel stuck, like just look at what you're doing to actually like dig that hole a little deeper, because I think the radical thing has been just accountability. Like, why do I
Mhm.
feel like this? Where am I playing the victim here? Where am I stifling my own potential? And, just the clearer that we get on that shit, the sooner we can just get rid of it and really just start opening ourselves up to a life that we didn't even imagine was possible.
Beautiful words. That was like a mic drop moment. So we are going to end it here because that was incredible. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, especially like life is not happening to us. We really are the creators of our lives and when we begin to embody that, we feel a lot more empowered to make decisions and yep, shit's going to happen that we're not happy with, but like how do we want to react to that? And that's really the only thing that is in our control, right? And sometimes things can hurt so much like the end of your marriage, even if you were mentally checked out, like finding out somebody had an affair, like that just brings up all the wounds, right? That brings up
Yeah.
unworthiness. That brings up, can I ever trust anyone again? It brings up so much. But as we mentioned earlier, had that not happened, you could have maybe still been there thinking about leaving. And look how
Girl, I
beautiful
would
your
still be
life turned
there.
out.
I promise you, I will still be there, because it's just sometimes the universe has to push you off the cliff because we get so stuck in the familiar toxicity. And so Yeah, I just there's so much potential that a lot of us are kind of leaving on the table, and so I hope that this episode of the show really reminds you that you are the creator of your own destiny.
We are. Janice, thank you so much for coming back on the show. I can't wait to see you again in person, hopefully again in Puerto Rico.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me this week. Make sure to visit theericacruz.com. That's Erica with a K, where you can subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. You can help this podcast grow by supporting me with an Apple Podcast rate and review. If you took anything away from this episode, I invite you to take a screenshot and share it on social media so that your favorite badass Latinas can also check it out. Be sure to tag me at the Erica Cruz. That's Erica with a K, because you know I want to see it. If you're ready to join the revolution and be a part of the Courage Driven Latina community, visit couragedrivenlatina.com to get more information and join the waitlist. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.